Today, there is more fallout from former President Trump's pre-Thanksgiving dinner with the rapper formerly known as Kanye West, with Mr. Trump spending the weekend backtracking and playing defense in a string of social media posts, saying that he didn't know the identity of white nationalist and Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes, who arrived with West at Mar-a-Lago and attended the dinner, that now has Republicans, mostly privately, once again condemning a decision by their former and potentially future leader. Joining me now to break it all down, NBC's Vaughn Hillier, Washington Post senior national political correspondent Ashley Parker, Charlie Sykes, founder and editor-at-large of The Bulwark, and Victoria DeFrancesca Soto, dean of the Clinton School of Public Service at the University of Arkansas. So, Vaughn, I'll start with you. You've taken a deeper dive into who Nick Fuentes is. What have you learned, presumably through the kind of Googling that Mr. Trump could have done, about who this man is and what he stands for?
Let's be clear, Garrett. Nick Fuentes is not an unknown entity, especially on the right. It was earlier this year at CPAC in Orlando, Florida. I was there attending the conference in which Republicans have, for now years, attended and spoken at, including Donald Trump himself, who was there that very weekend. The headline from that weekend was the fact that Nick Fuentes was holding his own counter conference, if you may, a white nationalist anti-Semitic conference just across the street. And it's tough. I think we are always here internally within the news organization debating how much airtime, how much attention do we pay to somebody like a Nick Fuentes, who is appearing on stage at that particular conference with the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Congressman Paul Gosar, former Maricopa County Sheriff, Joe Arpaio, those types of individuals. But you can no longer claim that these are fringe individuals here when he is appearing at dinner at Mar-a-Lago alongside the former president of the United States. To give you an idea, he is an overt white nationalist. This is an individual who was at Charlottesville in 2017. This is an individual who has said that young white men are, quote, the secret sauce to making America great again. This is a Nazi sympathizer who has praised Hitler. This is somebody who has praised Vladimir Putin. This is somebody, and I just want to read this quote to make it explicitly clear what Nick Fuentes believes and what he believes the future of America should be. And that is, quote, "We are going to take power in this country. We're going to do it within my lifetime. We are coming for you. Your days in power are numbered. You think you can replace us? You're wrong. We will replace you." This is an explicitly white nationalist, anti-Semitic, anti-gay, pro-male dominance individual here who had dinner with the former president of the United States and the leading candidate for president in 2024.
All right, so Ashley Parker, that's what Vaughn was able to find out probably fairly easily about Nick Fuentes. We saw those posts over the weekend from Trump trying to distance himself from Fuentes. This is a very familiar pattern, though, for folks like you who've covered him going back to his presidential and pre-presidential years, is it not?
It absolutely is. And in all of that distancing, one thing that struck me was what was not in it. There was no condemnation of Nick Fuentes. No. There was no condemnation of his beliefs, no condemnation of racism, white nationalism, or anti-Semitism. And having covered him in certain ways, this is the sort of thing that happened to a lesser extent in the White House. There were not the traditional barricades around him, and then has sort of become magnified on steroids in his post-presidency, where he lost even, those sort of few gatekeepers who did exist. So even if you take the former president and his team at their word that he didn't really know who Nick Fuentes was, which, as Vaughn lays out, is already somewhat dubious, and based on the number of times this president has lied and shared misinformation, there's no particular reason to take him on his word at this. But even if you believe that, just the fact that a racist, white nationalist, anti-Semite could get into the former president's private club and have a dinner meeting with the former president, that in of itself is stunning.
Right. At the very least, it's extraordinarily sloppy. And we've been talking about Fuentes, but Victoria, the Kanye West piece of this is just as troubling in some ways, because Donald Trump clearly knows who Kanye West is and knew about the kind of comments he has been making for the last several weeks, and he still welcomed him to his table. What's in that meeting for Trump or West, and what should we read into it?
What I'm seeing here is basically attention grabbing, right? So this to me was a throwback of reality TV. And there is the political piece of it, of the white nationalism and cozying up to that. I'm going to set that aside for just a moment. But it's really about grabbing the spotlight. And it's something that Trump knows extremely well how to do. And he knows that the artist formerly known as Kanye West and Nick Fuentes are people that can guarantee the spotlight being brought back onto him. And then he can deny and he can backpedal and do what he has been doing. But I think when we look at Trump losing a little bit of his grip in the last midterm election, Elon Musk just coming out and saying that he would support Ron DeSantis in 2024, I feel that this is a little bit of a media desperation ploy to get back into the spotlight and doing it in such an incredibly negative way in highlighting white nationalism.
Well, Charlie, to that end, hell of a campaign kickoff here for Donald Trump over the last 10 days or so, right? He launches his campaign. A couple days later, he's got a special counsel. A couple days after that, his taxes are going to get turned over to the Ways and Means Committee. A couple days after that, he's got this story. How problematic is it for Republicans in general that kind of this is what you get once again with Donald Trump back in the spotlight? All this kind of mess when, oh, by the way, there's a major Senate race that still has to be decided in which you cannot separate Donald Trump from the Republican candidate there.
Well, they bought this ticket a long time ago, and this does feel awfully familiar because we've seen Donald Trump engaging in these kinds of, wink-wink alliances with the bigots and the conspiracy theorists. We saw it in Charlottesville. We saw it with the Muslim ban. We saw it with Proud Boys, et cetera. And Republicans have decided over time that they were not going to take him on. They're not going to call him out. They're going to look at their shoes. And I guess we're seeing that muscle memory of cowardice once again. But, you point out how problematic this is. I continue to be struck by the fact that Donald Trump announced he was running for president again. And I think his intention was that he was going to clear the field and that there would be this mad rush of the Republican Party to embrace him again. None of that has happened. He's got a great deal of momentum. And I think that his opponents are sitting back thinking, we're not going to say anything. We're going to let Donald Trump continue to make missteps like this to implode. But of course, we've seen how that strategy works in the past. And I also have to say, look, there are real consequences for Donald Trump having dinner with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes, which is that he gives them oxygen, he gives them encouragement. And over the last 6 years, we have seen how this kind of hate has been normalized and mainstreamed. And at some point, Republicans, if they want to have a post-Trump future, are going to have to come to grips with this conflagration, what they have set in motion, because I think you're seeing it playing out in very real time.
It ties back to the point Vaughn made at the beginning, the challenge for newsrooms. How do you, not elevate these people inorganically, but still cover the news value of them meeting with a former and attempting to be future president? Ashley, I'm going to give you the last word here in the little bit of time we've got left. So far, the folks on the right who've been criticizing Donald Trump have been potentially people who would run against him. Chris Christie, probably the most prominent, who said this is just another example of the awful lack of judgment from Donald Trump, talking about his poor judgment in the past. We saw a similar comment from Asa Hutchinson. Is this the cracking of the door to, how folks will distance themselves from Trump going forward, whether it be just his direct opponents or other Republicans, in your view?
Perhaps, but one of the statements that was most interesting to me was from Mike Pompeo, another 2024 hopeful who served in the Trump administration, who was not quite as direct as former Governor Christie, who came out and very forcefully denounced anti-Semitism and said it had no place in our society, but did not in any way, shape, or form name the former president. And again, if you're someone who's closely following Mike Pompeo's tweets, you probably understand the context in which he was responding to. But there still does feel to be that little bit of hesitancy, even among people who hope to challenge him, of, yes, I want to take him on. Yes, I want to come out. And let's be clear, coming out against anti-Semitism is a pretty easy thing to do. It's like coming out in favor of dogs and grandmothers, but they don't want to directly go after Trump.